the room right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and start the meeting up. Thank you all first for coming to the meeting tonight. This is our first meeting of 2024, and as always, it will be an election of officers, and in some cases a re-election, and an election of board of director members, and some cases a re-election. And actually, in one case, we will have a new individual running for an officer, so we really appreciate that. Let me get into a little bit about some of the differences we're going to have tonight. And some of them you probably already are aware of, and that's during check-ins. We usually are able to walk around the room with a wireless mic. So everybody on Zoom can easily hear the people that are home as they check in. It's not that easy to go from Zoom to the room. So Lori keeps track of who is actually on Zoom, and she does those check-ins from the room. That part will be pretty much the same. But thank you all for moving up a little closer to be able to get to that through the microphone. Another thing you'll notice is that there are no name tags tonight. I am hoping that all of you remember your names. I'm pretty confident that even in the new year, your names have not changed, maybe significantly, but give it a shot, maybe first name or something like that when you go around and introduce yourself. That's kind of my fault because Lori can't carry everything and I really can't be at the meeting tonight. If for the benefit of those that may not be aware, I had my left knee replaced last Wednesday, and I'm still in the mode of making a recovery. And thanks to the general, as I call Lori, she's keeping me on track for doing everything I'm supposed to do. And that's including going to physical therapy tomorrow. And Randy, KF40, gave me some very encouraging words earlier tonight in a chat, probably 5-6 minutes ago. And he told me that I will just love physical therapy. Now, I'm not exactly sure how he meant that, but I know Randy's an honest guy and fun-loving guy and really good to work with. So I believe it was encouragement that I will go there tomorrow and it will be a great experience. If not, Randy, I probably can figure out where you live. So there we go. With that, I will jump over the hand the meeting back to the room. So you can do check-ins, and then I will start off with some opening comments when you get done with that. So let's let the room go back to the microphone for check-ins.
So we're going to try this, and it may or may not work, but if we can kind of start D, and if you could be loud enough, and if not, it's just going to be what it is.
Okay, I'm D, KU4GC, Hillsborough.
Dan, KR4UB, Southwest Orange County. Tim, KC1TWR, Barbaro. Paul, N2X,
Pat, K4QLU, Durham. Randy, KF40.
Karen, KG4YJZ.
John, N4SGW, South Capitol Hill.
Wow, W4, okay.
I'm Dave, K4DJW, Bridgeport.
Boyd, KO4TJL, Hillsborough.
Dave, W4SAR, Effort.
Laurie, N1YXU, and I'm going to, I should have brought this piece of paper up, but hold on. I'm going to grab a piece of paper that I wrote down everyone who's on Zoom, and I can definitely tell who has the announcers' voices in the room. Some very nice broadcasting voices. All right, we have Bill, KI4RAN, obviously Bruce, N1LN, Ken, KO4DHJ, Sam, KJ4VWG, Wilson, W4BOH, John, KX4P, and Sherry, WB4OSU. If I missed anyone, I will catch you. And I'm going to ask for a favor. Please, if you are on Zoom and you do not need to speak to the room, please make sure that you're actually on mute, because I may or may not be able to mute you, and I definitely cannot unmute you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to flip this back over to Bruce, and he is going to give us an introduction to tonight's agenda.
Okay, I am back. Well, thank you all for introducing yourself and again for coming tonight. And being on Zoom, I could hear everybody that introduced themselves. So even though it's not the same as it has been, everything worked fine from my perspective. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about in opening comments tonight. You will notice if you look up front that you don't see the normal big speaker from Mark and his projector and all of the electronics that he always brings to the club meetings and his wireless mic, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to start off tonight to thank Dan for pulling together the equipment that we have and are using tonight to continue along with what we've gotten so used to over the last 2 years. And that's the ability to run an integrated Zoom and in-person meeting, including audio, video, etc. It's worked out great. And tonight we are, running on Dan's equipment. Let me go a little farther than that. We also are, there's a few of us from the leadership team that are working on what do we need to do for a long-term solution so we can continue with our multimedia, I guess I could say, way of holding meetings, which would be Zoom and in person. Do we have to buy equipment? If so, what's the least amount of equipment we would need to buy? What's the least amount of money we would need to spend to be able to provide a reasonably similar ability for going forward? I mean, obviously, we don't want to put thousands of dollars into something and buy equipment like Mark had. So there's 3 of us that are looking at it right now. There may be more people, but that's Dan, that's Chris, and that's myself that are looking into this. Chris also has equipment. He has offered to also provide assistance in our video and in-person meetings. But unfortunately, Chris has other Monday night commitments, and he's not always able to be here. So we want to have a solution that we don't need to jump through hoops on Saturday, Sunday before the meeting and figure out who's around, who's got what do we need to bring. And we want to make sure that we have a solution that is easily implementable for all future meetings. I would also, in part of going through the agenda, I would like to thank Boyd and Dave, who are the main presenters tonight, for show and tell. This is January. Last year we had show and tell in January, and everybody really wanted to do it again. Well, the surprising thing is we only had 2 members out of our 104 or 110 in the club that came forward and said, yeah, not only would I like to do it again, I have something that I would like to bring to the meeting for show and tell. And this was probably a little more work than usual because I'm a little, incapacitated right now. So their deliverable to me was more than it normally would have been. But, over the past 4 or 5 days, we worked together and they sent me, things in various formats, and Dave put it in a PowerPoint presentation. And, so we did I believe a reasonably good job, but I'll let you folks be the judge of that when we get to it. So I really like to thank both of them for coming through tonight and helping out with to make this meeting still a reality. Let's see. Yeah, the reason why we do this, Mark, as you know, is moving to Seattle. Not going to work long. What you will see when we work through these options is, there's going to be some money spent. We'll make sure we keep everybody informed of what we're doing. Again, we want to try to maintain a reasonable amount of money. Can we get away with buying powered speakers, for example? Can we get away with buying a USB powered wireless microphone? What, if anything, do we need for another camera? So how cheap can we make this stuff work and get a decent deliverable? And we'll let you all know because, well, I mean, I wouldn't be here tonight at the meeting with you if Dan wasn't able to pull this solution together. So we want to continue to be able to offer that capability. Another thing we're doing tonight is the elections. something that is very important. We do that every year. We do it at the January meeting. So when we get back to get me off the screen, and you'll see what is in the agenda, you'll see some slides that we put together, and you can see who is actually on the ballot for president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. You will see who's on the ballot for the board of directors, and you'll also see where we currently are. If you think back to an earlier meeting where we talked about having assistant roles, assistants to certain positions, and people that may already be in the officers group in the board or an elected officer position that would have an additional role. Well, we'll also let you see where that is. So the elections tonight are for the 4 officers and the board of directors, and then we will show you where we are with the assistant positions and the other very critical roles. So that will be the election part of it, and then we'll go right over to show and tell, where we'll hear from Boyd. I won't steal his thunder and tell you the topic, but I've been on here for a while, and Boyd has probably already given his presentation twice. Because I've heard a lot of people walking around the room talking to him about what he has with him, because he brought a model, or a reality with him of what he built, and talking to everybody about, well, this is where I got this trigger, and this is how you load up the air. And so I think, Boyd, there's going to be a lot of interest in your presentation, as I thought there would be. So again, thank you much for doing that. And then we'll hear from Dave about a lithium phosphate battery pack, which I think there'll be also a lot of interest about people that want to run off of batteries and what they can do for backup batteries and stuff. So also a very interesting, well done presentation. Then we'll go back to me and I'll do some closing comments. And I think they will be interesting, at least I hope they will be, and then we will check out. So with that, Lori, why don't we go ahead and go to the slide 3, which is the election slide. You'll lose my face, but unfortunately, you don't get to lose my voice. Okay, there's the cover letter. Next slide would be the agenda. Okay, that's what we already heard. Check-ins. And here's the first slide of the elections. I got to move my Zoom pictures out of the way so I can see it. There we go. Okay, so here's what we're looking at tonight. We're looking at club officers. The officers are elected for a 1-year term. At the end of that 1 year, they have to be reelected for the 2nd year, 3rd year, whatever, or they need to be replaced. Why is, go back, why is that significant? Because this is the final year for Bruce, Lori, and Dan. We are more than willing to carry on this year. This will be my 3rd year. This will be Lori's 3rd year. And I think this will be Dan's 33rd year. Okay. A big thanks to Boyd once again, because Boyd has come forward and said, yes, I would be very interested in running for the vice president position. So the current officers and board members were very pleased when Boyd said yes. So you'll see his name on the ballot. Board of directors. What has changed in the board of directors? And if you go back to a couple meetings ago, you'll remember that we talked about potentially having to change our bylaws. Well, right now, the board of directors individuals, there's no limit, first of all, to how many we can have. But when you run for a board of directors position, your first term will be for 2 years. And you'll see that on a future slide, how that plays in. However, if you would like to stay on beyond your first term, when that 2nd year expires, and you would like to stay with the club in a board position, you will now be given the choice of, do you want to extend for a 1 year, or do you want to extend for a 2 years like it's been traditional? And we've got a mixture of the board of directors individuals that are running for office tonight and will need to be voted on that are 1 or 2 year extensions. Right now, there's nobody new. So if there's somebody in the room that would like to run to be part of our board of directors, there's always room for you. We just need to know that. And then we'll talk about the appointed positions. Is it a role that is in addition to what somebody already has? Is it an assistant? And the assistant positions we talked about were assistant treasurer, assistant webmaster, assistant repeater team lead. We also talked about an assistant for field day and potentially other positions, okay? and that this will be listed on a future slide. Okay, so let's get to it. Here is the list of officers that you will be voting for, hopefully. If not, we have a problem because we're not running against anyone. Here's the list of the officers that you will be voting for tonight. Me for president, Boyd for vice president, Dan for treasurer, and Lori for secretary. Now, if somebody wants to throw their hat into the ring and say, hey, I would also like to run for that office, this is your last chance to do that. I mean, we don't have primaries and stuff. We would have to have a true election tonight and say how many people are for this person, how many people are for that person. We're not currently set up to do that, but we could make it happen over the period of the meeting. All right, so this is where we are for the officers election for the term January 24 until December 31st of 2024. Okay, next slide. This is where the 1 year or 2 year term kicks in. You'll see that we have Dee, Wilson, Karen, John, and Aurora are current board members, and their term expiration that they're in right now really expired December 23, okay? Chris, this is his first term that he was elected for. So January to December 2024, that would be the final year or second year of his first election term. So Dee, Karen, John, and Aurora all indicated that they would be more than willing and like to stay on the board of directors to help us out with the management and running of the club as part of the leadership team, but they would only like to do it 1 year at a time. Wilson, however, said he would be more than happy to run for 2 years. So if elected tonight, Wilson, his 2 year term will expire December of 2025. And you'll see item number 7 there. This could be you, okay? And I guess what I would stop right now and just take a poll, is there anybody on Zoom or anybody in the room that would like to join this astute group of individuals as part of your club's leadership team? Lori, how many hands are in the air?
Sorry, I was looking at the I did not see anybody on Zoom, but Bob Cook has volunteered and he is in the room here.
Oh, wow. Bob, that is fantastic. I will update the slide. I can't update this one because Lori has it, but we will add you to the list of the OCRA Board of Directors. And that's actually kind of an extension to the role you've got now, because you're kind of already the liaison between DFMA and OCRA, and this just kind of makes that more official. So welcome to the group. W4FK will now be added to our list of... I gotta shut up this other computer. Okay, there we go. All right, so Bob will be added to the board of directors. So we will have 7 members to the board for 2020 year of 2024. Excellent. Before we do voting, let's go to the next slide. Let me show you what we have there. Okay, let's go back to this assistant position we talked about. During the last meeting, 3 individuals, Ron Craig, KO4RON, who actually was also the program presenter at the last meeting, Chip Bloch, KF4WBK, and John Welton, N4SJW, all indicated that they would like to play the role of assistant, not full-time treasurer, full-time webmaster, full-time repeater team lead, but they would like to be assistants. And in this case, all 3 of these people would be assistants to Dan, because Dan currently holds not just the treasurer position, that's what he's getting elected for, but he also is our current webmaster and repeater team lead. So these are appointed positions, and the way we do that is people come forward like John, Chip, and Ron did, and the individual that they would be assistant to would either know that person and know their qualifications, or discuss the role with that person and determine their qualifications, if indeed they believe they are qualified to play the role as assistant. And Dan has done that with all three of them. And what we need to do now is we need to take the next step and start putting together a more of a job description and a training plan almost of what will transpire to bring these people up to speed. And they all have the qualifications, so that'll probably be about a 5-minute job. It'll take longer to put the stuff on a piece of paper than it will to really determine whether they're capable or not. But we have 3 assistants. Let's talk about a role. Dave Snyder, Field Day Coordinator. That's not an elected position, but Dave every year has said, yes, I would be happy to do it again for the combined OCRA DFMA Field Day activity. But what we would like to do is to get an assistant position for Dave so he doesn't have to do this all alone. It's great during the first 8 months of the year, but during the final 4 months of crunch time, it would be really good to have somebody that can work together with Dave, with the documentation, the planning, work with the band captains, the logistics of the day, work with John if John's doing meals again. It'd be great to have somebody else other than poor Dave get everything thrown on top of him, because not only is he the field day coordinator, he's also the band captain for a digital and I believe a sideband, I think he was last year, operation. And as the field day coordinator, he does all of the log collection and the submission to ARRL, et cetera. So, this is a position that is not elected, it's appointed. We make sure the person is qualified. I think Dave is pretty qualified. He's been doing this for us now for about as many years as Dan has been treasurer. But we need to get an assistant for Dave so he can offload and share really some of the crunch time job responsibilities. The next person is Aurora. Aurora is already a board of directors member and probably will be reelected tonight, but she's also the lead of the ham pie group. She works with the coordination of everything that the ham pie team does, and they have a Zoom meeting every so often, and they go on tours, and they have quite an interesting technology group and project-focused, technology-focused team, and Aurora is kind of the leader that pulls a lot of that together with the other members of her team, but at least from a OCRA leadership team perspective, she's our view into the ham pie team. OXCOM lead. I was very pleased that we had somebody come forward, Fred Gavillo. You may know Fred, he's part of the Chatham County, come forward and say he would like to help with OXCOM. And he was going to join tonight, but he's had many things going on, so I'm not sure whether he joined. But what we're not looking for this position to be is the OXCOM coordinator between OCRA and Orange County. What we are looking for this person to do, and Fred and I had quite a long conversation about this, is to provide a level of assistance to me, really, for how do we build a relationship with Orange County? How do we find out what they might want us to do, what we might need from them? How do we, first of all, get on the same page for, is there room in our things to do list and their things to do list for us actually to work together to add value to any kind of emergency responses within Orange County? So this is not the old Steve Album AEC role. That doesn't exist anymore. Okay, and Fred is really kind of like my arms and legs. He calls it a Sherpa. If you're familiar with the role of what a Sherpa does if you're climbing the Himalayas, he makes sure that that team that gets up to the top of the mountain is successful and can actually plant their flag. So Fred is going to be a big help with us trying to move forward, which we really haven't done in the last 2 years, at least while I've been here, and try to get something moving with OXCOM. John Green, I know John is on the call tonight. John and I had some conversations today and over the past few days while the presentations that you're going to see got pulled together. John has volunteered again to be the programs coordinator. We'll leave it to John to find out if he needs an assistant or not. But John, also a board of directors member, has volunteered to take that role on again. And then again, you see a familiar name, Aurora. outreach coordinator is a new role within OCRA, within the leadership team of OCRA. And really, Aurora has started to put together a job description for that. I wish I could pull it up, but you know, I think my leg is screwing up my mind. I don't remember where exactly that is, but it's a very interesting position where she wants to help us get into the community. Is it through school programs? Is it through the scouts? How do we reach into the geographies and the people around us to try to get OCRA some more visibility in the areas that would benefit the community and the areas that would also then benefit OCRA? So she has taken that on, and that could be a very demanding role, and I really appreciate her for doing that. And we'll find out after it gets defined. Maybe an assistant would be good for that position. So that's what you're looking at. Again, the first two slides, the OCRA leadership, the OCRA officers, the four of us, and the OCRA board of directors, now adding Bob Cook to that list, are what you're going to be voting for this evening. Lori, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, time to vote. So, are there any additional club members that would like to come forward? Well, we've already had Bob, so thank you, Bob. And I believe he was the only one that waved his hand, and we got his name before he could get his hand down. I don't know if he, was waving to join or whatever, but you're in, Bob. So now let's vote. And this is where I'm going to kind of turn it over to maybe Lori, since she's in the room, to get a consensus of, is this something we want to vote individual by individual? Or occasionally what we do is we say, would somebody make a motion that we vote for the entire slate of officers by consensus, and then somebody seconds it, and then everybody becomes elected in one fell swoop. So let me turn it over to Lori. So let me turn it over to Lori so she can help me with that.
Yeah, what I was going to ask is there anyone who, I'm going to be bold and say, is there anyone who would like to move that we do this by consensus rather than by position? There are a bunch of hands going up in the. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to unshare the PowerPoint slide, and we will see people on Zoom. The folks on Zoom, you do not need to unmute, and we're just, hold on one moment. Thank you, Dan. All right, I can see everyone on Zoom other than Bill, who I believe has his camera off, but that should be fine. And I can also see everyone in the room. So the motion has been recommended and approved that we are going to vote by consensus. So by show of hands, can I please see for those on Zoom and also in the room if you approve the election as presented on the slides? We have unanimous approval. So congratulations and thanks to everyone who is now on the board.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate everybody that has been part of the leadership team for the last 2 years, those of you that joined last year, and those of you that are joining this year. And I think we've got a lot of work to do, as always, but I think we'll have a good time doing it. Very soon, we'll be sending out meeting dates and stuff like that. And as always, we'll do most of the meetings. Well, we did all the board meetings on Zoom, and then we'll continue to do the integrated meetings here on both modes. So with that, it's time for the presentation and programs part of the meeting. And the first one up tonight is Boyd. So many of you know that Boyd has been in the process of building his station for a period of time. He came in and did a presentation earlier this year where he talked to us about putting up antennas and the fun he had running coax. And he had this little white top to a container or baseball or something that he had a smiley face on it, but that became the fun part of the presentation about where is that going to show up next. Well, what Boyd has now is a presentation about wire antennas and branches. And if anybody has ever put up a wire antenna, you know that wire antennas and branches are not the most friendly parts. They don't work well together. So with that, I will turn this over to Boyd. I will mute myself and I will turn this over to.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Boyd Hudson. Okay. For those of you who may not know, my name is Boyd Hudson. I've been a ham for 3 years. KO4GJO. I've also been a member of OCRA for about 3 years. I've got a couple of wire antennas up and a tri-bander, a Comet GP15, I believe it is. So I had some interesting times getting those up and taking care of them, and wanted to show a couple things here. A throw bag with some lightweight line attached to it was recommended as far as getting a line up over a branch. For those of you who may not be able to tell, I'm not the most athletic kind of person around. And it's been said of me, and whether it's a beanbag or baseball, I couldn't throw one to save my life. So I needed to find a different way. Well, somebody said, well, just hold it by the string and do a David and Goliath and use it like a slingshot. Well, that may give it more momentum. It may go farther, but the question is, which direction is it going to go? So that was something that worked out a little bit, but not very well. Well, I was looking on YouTube and found a video about making a coaxial air launcher. And I figured that since I was involved with ham radio and used a lot of coax, that would just be a novel item that might be fun to build. Can I have the first slide, Lori? Maybe go on to this. There we go. Never be afraid to try something new. Remember, the amateurs built the Ark and professionals built the Titanic. So when you embark on a new project, you want to do your research. You want to get familiar with the materials you're using. When I bought an Ed Fong roll-up J-pole antenna that you could put in a piece of PVC once you got it, he was very specific that you get the thin-walled PVC. I didn't know there was a thin wall versus a thick wall. I have some to pass around. There's an example of a thin wall, and you take this at the same time. That's thick wall tubing. Thin wall tubing is not made for pressure applications. The thick wall is, and when you want to figure out how much pressure you can use, it's printed on the side of the tubing. So you want to be aware of what you're working with. You want to keep a wide margin of safety and not get anywhere near that maximum pressure rating. Too much pressure can end up creating a hand grenade, and shards of PVC will go a lot of directions, and they might not show up that easy on X-ray to pick them out. So you want to keep that in mind. You want to make a plan, write stuff down on paper, figure out how much tubing you're going to use, how many joints and fittings. The guy that built my house said we can't figure out the cost till we count the bricks and the sticks. So you want to plan things out. That may also include following instructions. Okay, that means you're actually going to have to read the instructions if you're going to be expected to follow them. With PVC cement, you have standard, medium duty, and heavy duty. What are the different applications for? You have to clean the pipe. It has to be dry And there's a primer that you're supposed to use. Usually that's the purple color stuff. You actually want to follow the recommended procedures. When somebody gives you a recommendation, like use silicone spray when you're running your coax, and you don't do it, you're not going to get a good result. Ask me how I know. Next slide. Okay. This is a lawn sprinkler valve made by Rainbird, I believe. I decided to use one of these rather than a simple turn on, turn off air valve because it will dump a large volume of air very rapidly. And you have the option of using the solenoid that comes with it, which is a 12-volt solenoid, but you can trigger it with a 9-volt battery. But the disadvantage is that if your battery dies, you're stuck up a creek if you don't have a spare. But it can be modified to use a compressed air nozzle as a trigger release that works very effectively and is very convenient and easy to use. They come in 3/4 inch or 1 inch. I went with the 1 inch because bigger is better when it comes to airflow. Okay. Next page. The air inlet air valve is a Schrader air valve. This was a screw-in type with NPT, which is National Pipe Thread. That is a tapered fitting. And so you really don't want to use your standard tap and die set to put threads into plastic. For $5 on Amazon, you can get the appropriate size tap and drill size, drill bit to put these in. And then you can go in behind it with an applicator and add epoxy to it. And that's not going to go anywhere. So that was the first one I used. Next slide. All right, there's a picture of the tap and the drill bit. Next slide. That was the finished product. Now, this was originally designed to shoot a slug of frozen fish bait attached to a surf rod about 200 or 300 yards out into the surf, past the breakers. And with a bipod or an ice chest, it would work very well as a mortar and great for that. Not so well to pick up a pipe this size in diameter and try and aim it up into the trees and hold it there until you're ready to shoot. So that wasn't working out too well. When I first decided to test it, I should have known better. Next slide. That was the test setup I did. Now, when I was in respiratory school and they were talking about standard temperatures and pressures, they had a picture of a lab where a bunch of nerdy lab guys decided to see how ballistic an H cylinder would get, which is an oxygen tank about this tall and about that big in diameter, if they just cut the valve off. So they designed and made a guillotine for it and cut the valve off this thing. Well, they had put it up again, aimed it at an exterior wall. They put in a 1/2 inch piece of plate steel. Well, the picture was standing where the H tank was, looking through the hole in the wall because it went through the plate steel, through the cinder block wall, out into the parking lot and trashed about 5 cars. And I am so glad I never had to explain anything like that to a boss. But yeah, I should have known better. Next slide. With a mere 20 pounds of pressure, it just about blew the front of the drawer there. The one drawer I have in my workbench just about blew the whole front of the drawer off. I had to re-nail and re-glue it. Any further testing was done outdoors and not near a parking lot. Next slide. I decided to try and shorten it. And when I did, I messed up some of the internal dimensions and messed with it and decided I didn't like that plan. I was going to go with plan B. I went back to the internet. I found a picture of something that looked like it would be better and decided to redesign and replan the whole thing. Next slide. With this, there's a different Schrader valve. Instead of screwing in using a pipe thread, this one passes through the back of, in this case, the end cap to the air reservoir, and then is tightened down with a nut from the outside. As the pressure increases, it's going to improve the seal between the end cap and that valve. And I thought that was a lot less likely to get loose or dislodged or go places it shouldn't. Next slide. I used hex nipple, 1-inch thread on the, I used 3 of these to go on between each end of the sprinkler valve and then 1 up by the barrel. This way you can get an adjustable wrench on there to tighten it exactly how much you want to so it doesn't get over tightened. If you don't have something with flats that you can get a wrench on, you're going to end up using channel locks, and that's going to leave lots of sharp little bits sticking up that you can slice your fingers on, and that doesn't feel good. So those are the type of brass fittings I used. Next slide. Here's a picture of the sprinkler valve, the trigger mechanism, and an air pressure gauge. Now the pipe that I used for the air chamber says it's good up to 280 pounds pressure. That air gauge only goes up to 100 pounds. I'm not putting more than 100 pounds in it. If 20 pounds will blow the front of my drawer off, I don't need a whole lot more than that. I've had it up to about 80 pounds and it went higher than my house up into a tree, which was fine. Next slide. That's a little bit different perspective of the same shot. And I have this thing up here on the desk you can look at closer if you haven't already. Next slide. All right, there's a picture of it again against some cardboard, so it's a little easier to see. This is something that you can actually shoulder and just sight down the barrel. Turns out it's very accurate. A friend of mine got a shot about 60 feet in the air within a 1 foot square area, and he got all excited about it because it worked so well. I'm figuring he's going to borrow it sometime this spring. Next slide. Watch where you're aiming that thing. All right, this thing shoots a projectile. There's an element of firearm safety that you need to be aware of, especially if you have more than one other person helping you put up an antenna or something. It's easy to get distracted. I will charge this with air, but I'm not going to put anything in the barrel until I get to the spot where I'm going to shoot it from. Then I'll load it, aim it, and not touch that trigger release until I'm ready to shoot it. You want to be very aware of that. I don't know if you remember the Three Stooges when they have a 2x4 and somebody calls him and he turns around and hits somebody in the head, or turns around another direction and hits 2 other people in the head. When I was, before I was a respiratory therapist, I was a corrections officer for a few years. And one time when we were out on the range to qualify, we had a new corrections officer there. And we were qualifying with pistols that day. And he had a semi-automatic pistol. And he fired off a certain number of shots. And the range master said, "Cease fire." And when he went to turn around and put his pistol down, he had his finger on the trigger and went around like this. And range master called him by name and said, "Put the gun on the table." And very quietly, he came up to him and put his hand on his shoulder and said, "You just pointed a loaded weapon at me and half the people here at the range. If you ever do that again, I will disarm you and knock you out. Don't you ever, ever do that again. Secure your weapon, pack up your stuff, you're done for the day." And he had to turn around and go home and come back another time when he learned a little bit more about range safety. So you always want to be aware, where are you pointing this, whether you think it's loaded or not. Okay. So that's it as far as how to get the rope up over a limb so you can pull an antenna up. There is some discussion about branches being in the way. I have a little gadget here that when I went to look for it, I found out that it came from Sears. Yeah, this is how it looks new. I actually had two of those. I got one of these from my dad because he kept borrowing mine, and when he passed, I got it back. So that's what it looks like new. What this is, it's got about a foot and a half length of chain that looks like it came off a chainsaw. And it's got a rope tied to each end. And you get a line up over the branch and then pull this up and get it over the branch. And you can pull back and forth on the ropes and cut through the branch. Just make sure you're not standing under it when you do that. It's always best to have a second person helping you with this. But I've taken out branches that are 50, 60 feet high in the air, and it worked very well for that. It's a lot cheaper than calling a tree service. I think that about wraps it up. Any questions from anybody? Yes, sir.
In building it, did you have any challenges on the pressure side of pipe leaks at the threads and trying to get it to seal?
Amazingly enough, no, I didn't. If you'll notice that the Teflon tape on these fittings is yellow. That's intended for sealing gas as opposed to water. If you go to Home Depot or wherever, you can see different levels of Teflon tape. You can see white Teflon tape. I think they have a double thickness. And then there's a gray Teflon tape, which is a little heavier duty. And then there's a yellow Teflon tape, which is meant to use for like propane fittings and stuff with gas. But that provides a little bit better level of seal than just the standard Teflon tape. But amazingly enough, it didn't have any leaks with that. Bob. Sure. Sure.
Okay, so I have one that has a fishing drill line. I'm actually going fishing line over and pull the heavier rope at that. What are you buying?
With this, I'm launching the line that I showed earlier. This is actually proper term is a throw bag. This is what's used by arborists, the guys that do all the tree work. This is a polyethylene line that's very slick and not very likely to get hung up in the tree and in the bark. I think this is called Zing It. This is an 8-ounce weight, which just fits very nicely down the barrel of this. This has lasted me 2-3 years, at least 2 years, with no problem other than I almost got it stuck in a tree once. So I'm going to need to get another one. I had gotten a couple that I thought would be about the right size from AliExpress. The trouble with this was it won't fit in the barrel, so I couldn't use it with my gun. So I tried to throw it over a branch. After missing about 5 times and just having it land back on the sidewalk, the stitching split. So it was not anywhere near as rugged as it needed to be. I've saved all the shot from that, and using a short section of PVC pipe and a couple cable legs, I glued this together just in case I needed something as an emergency backup. I don't know how rugged this will be if I miss and hit the tree. This isn't going to feel good if it comes down on somebody's head. This at least is a little pliable and won't be near as bad as getting hit with something that's pretty solid. So you got a choice, but this bag was like 20 bucks. Oh, I'm sorry. This bag is like $22 to get a replacement, and eventually I may just get a second bag because I really don't like the idea of using something solid like that. Yeah. Pardon?
That box part of the.
This is designed for using with the throw bag. You just give it a twist and it collapses and it all folds up, and you have Velcro ties that keep it in place. I use it to pay out the line. Yeah, when it folds up, you got a nice little convenient package like that. You unfold it and give it a twist, then it opens right up. This I got off AliExpress because it was about a third of the price that you get it from a tree service, a supplier for tree service. I don't remember exactly what they call it, but if you go to AliExpress and you put in throw bag, then you'll probably get a whole bunch of related things coming up too. But that's been really easy to deal with. And by keeping all the line just dropped straight in the bag, you don't have to worry about rolling it up and unrolling it and getting it twisted. Sometimes it still manages to get a kink and you'll get a whole little bird's nest go flying up in the air. But I've got 2 lengths of line in there, so there's enough extra line where that really doesn't create a problem, other than untangling when you get it back down. Any other questions?
Just a statement. I have one similar to that, same diameter. Mine shoots like PVC bullets. When I first got it, I was throwing my first line up. I had about 75 PSI, and I hit the body of the tree up there, and it just exploded.
Yeah,
it hit that hard. I would hate to get hit.
Yeah, that's why I prefer that softer throw bag that the arborists use.
I never thought about loading that thing with the throw bag that I have. I'm gonna have to check and see if it fits.
Yeah, they make them in the 8-ounce size, and that's the one that fit this one.
Google folding throw bag. Find that.
Okay. Anything else?
One other comment. This is Dan. I built one of these, a little bit different design. I did a lot of research on PVC material strength, and everything Boyd said about using the proper PVC, rated PVC, because it will turn into shrapnel if it's overpressured or struck hard. The other interesting thing I found, if you put it in your car in the summertime and inside temperatures can get up to 140 degrees, this stuff loses about half its strength at that high. It is plastic. It's fairly low temperature design plastic. So I don't ever leave mine in the car. I'm sure it will recover, but I think it will, but that's not something I want to experiment with.
Any questions from Zoom? No. Okay. That about wraps it up then.
Boyd, thank you very much. As expected, extremely well done. I think you did a great job taking us through all of the steps. I can see some thumbs up from other Zoom participants. So thank you much for another excellent presentation. And while Boyd's packing up and getting off stage, let me introduce our next volunteer. That will be Mr. Snyder is going to come talk to us about this portable high-capacity 12-volt battery pack that he has been building, and some of how it has worked and how he's been able to use that. So I'm not sure how close Dave is to appearing in front of the camera, but probably not too far away.
Here we are. I'm coming out.
And there he is. Okay, I can't see the rest of the room, Dave, so thank you much. With that, I will turn the stage back over to Dave, and Lori can bring up the presentation, and we're good to go. All yours, Dave.
Will do. Will do. Well, thank you all. Well, at Field Day last year, I had to use one of my high capacity batteries at the time. I got them from Adriano a while back, some lead acid glass batteries that were big, high capacity, and they were 180 amp hours. Now I need that because I sometimes run 1 or 2 amateur radio field day stations off of that. So I do need the capacity. But here's the problem. Those things weigh 180 pounds a piece. I have 2 of them. So I needed help to bring one to field day last year, and my back spoke to me for days afterward, essentially. So it was 180 pounds for 180 amps. This pack here is 200 amp hours. And if you'll pardon me, good thing I ate my Wheaties, right? It weighs about 60 pounds with the packaging and everything that I did there. So, and that's using lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are a good deal lighter, and they're capable of high capacity and capable of dumping high current for an extended period as well. So, Lori, if you could bring it up, I'll go through the slides and tell you a little bit more about them, and then afterwards I'll demonstrate a bit with this pack that I put together, which is nicely portable in my opinion. And that's what this will be about. Well, it's a lithium iron phosphate battery pack, which I put together myself, and I put it in packaging, which makes it a little bit weatherproof, but also very portable. Now, you saw me pick it up. I don't have to pick it up and carry around. This thing's on wheels, so I can wheel it around, no problem. And I wasn't thinking about using it just for field day. Next slide, please. I also needed it for emergency power at home. My home is completely electric, so I do need it for emergency lighting when the power does go out. And also, Karen and I do a lot of camping, historical reenacting, but we both have sleep apnea. So we both have to use CPAP machines. And I needed something that was able to run 2 CPAP machines for at least 2 nights, or even 3 nights. And this is capable of doing that, and it works well. Well, lithium iron phosphate batteries came out a while back, and they have a lot of advantages to them and some disadvantages. I'm just going to run through those. First, the advantages. They are lighter and more palatable for the capacity that you have. It's about 1/3 the weight of a lead-based battery. 3 times the cycling of lead-based batteries before degradation. That is, if you maintain a good discipline on a cycling, these batteries can be cycled up to 3,000 times before they start showing degradation. Most lead-based batteries, by about 1,000 times, if you're treating them well, they're starting to go on you. Very low self-discharge, circa 1 to 3% per month. Last time I charged this pack was 2 months ago, by the way, and it's lost very little of its voltage. They can be deep discharged for real. I mean, they can be discharged as low as 20% of their capacity without damaging the cells. And they're capable of an extended high amperage outflow without damage. The BMS I have in there is capable of handling 120 amps going out. And you could run these batteries at that rate down to 20% without damaging them. And then lithium iron phosphate batteries are much safer than the other lithium-based cells. I mean, we've all seen the pictures of the electric cars going up in flames and all that. It's much safer than other. Physical damage to the cell will not result in a fire, even though lithium is a very reactive metal. The electrolyte they use with that, the compounding kind of seals it off with like a gel if you ever puncture the battery pack. Let's move to the next slide. We'll go to the other side of the coin. What are the weaknesses of using a lithium iron phosphate battery? They are expensive. So 3 to 4 times the cost of a lead batteries. That is, if you're dealing with quality lithium phosphate cells. They don't like extreme temperatures. They can be damaged by freezing temperatures or extended exposures above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a bit conservative. Where you really start seeing damage is 140 degrees and up to these cells. So I wouldn't recommend leaving them inside a vehicle in the summer, because that may damage them, or having them working in any area where there's a lot of heat, essentially. They will definitely be damaged by overcharging. So, and that starts damaging their cycling ability. They will degrade if you overcharge them. And that's where you also run into the risk further down of thermal runaway. We'll get into that a little bit. It needs a battery management system, which is an integrated circuit and which keeps the cells monitored and balanced. So you're trying to avoid that overcharging if at all possible. But the BMS will also protect against if you're going to deal with the temperature extremes like the freezing or the upper high temperatures, the BMS will automatically shut down the batteries to help protect the cells. Risk of thermal runaway without a BMS. That's what happens if you start getting into 140 degrees and above. You start getting a runaway reaction. It starts generating its own heat and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. I just looked up a paper on this morning. It's a very fast reaction, 5 degrees centigrade per second once it starts running away. And it usually results in the rupture of the battery cell. And needless to say, the destruction of the cell. It's not going to work after that. So that's something you want to avoid. It's a rare incident, but if you take the proper precautions, even rarer with this kind of lithium chemistry in these batteries is any risk of fire. You may get a rupture, you'll get a battery blowing apart, but usually it doesn't go up in flames. So, next slide, please. And overall, of all the chemistries, this is the cheapest, not the cheapest, the safest to use out there. With that, I say don't go on the cheap, buy quality cells. Bargain price cells are poor quality. May even be used cells that have been cycled many times, marketed as new. So beware of foreign suppliers. Some of them are good. These are made in China, but they are of good quality. We'll get into that later. But I've heard of bad stories dealing with Alibaba that if you don't find a trustworthy supplier, you're running a risk of either at worst something that will rupture or go up in flames. At best, you're going to lose your money. And look out for prices that are too good. I nearly got taken. I was on eBay and looking at an overseas dealer. He says, "Oh, $85 for a 150 amp hour cell. That's even good for a lead acid battery." So I thought I'd try it. And the guy gave me a delivery date on everything, tracking and whatnot. And the date came and passed and nothing happened. I emailed him, no response. I got a hold of eBay customer service, and thankfully, with a lot of these overseas suppliers, they'll hold it in escrow until we can confirm that the buyer has received the shipment. And eBay customer service come back to me and says, he's not giving real tracking information. So here's your money back. So I dodged a bullet in that one, got my money back. Instead, I purchased from a stateside supplier who was also on eBay, but here's the difference. He had thousands, literally, of positive reviews on him. So I figured that's a trustworthy supplier. These cells were made by China Aviation Lithium Battery Corporation. I figure if they're making it for airplanes, they got to be safe. They have to be very good and up to spec. Plus, this fellow who imports them checks them out. He vets them before he puts them up for sale on eBay. And as I mentioned, they were expensive. It's $600 for four times 50 amp hour cells for 12 volts. Actually, they're if you gang them together, it's the 12 volts essentially. And they are very sturdy. I'll show them to you afterwards when I open up the pack here. But they're very well packaged, very durable cases on them, which is important when you're dealing with lithium batteries. Next slide, please. Likewise, don't go cheap on the battery maintenance system. You can find them cheap also on eBay, on Alibaba, elsewhere. Again, if you don't know the supplier or can't trust them, it's a pig in a poke. So I went with this this was also on eBay, this other supplier who also had lots of very good ratings, but I also liked their warranty. Their warranty was that 100% they will, if it doesn't work, or even if you break it yourself through your own actions, they'll replace it or refund your money. So and it's a company called Overkill. Overkill meaning that they do an overkill on safety issues with their with this BMS. And that was $150. You could find a lot that are very much cheaper as well. And again, this one's also made in China. But again, the supplier who imports them into the United States checks them through thoroughly, and he backs it up with that warranty. So I felt very comfortable going with that. And I'm glad I did. Next slide, please. So the Overkill battery management system, it has a Bluetooth transceiver and a smartphone app, and I'll be showing you that later on. I can put up the app on my phone, and I can look at the condition of the battery, its capacity, what each cell is doing, essentially. A lot of good stuff you can do with it. So like I said, cell voltage and capacity can be monitored in real time, as well as the amperage going out and in. You could see what's happening as you're using it. There are bleeder resistors between each of the cells, which are used to balance cell voltages within 15 millivolts of each other. So that prevents the risk of individual cells being damaged by overvoltage. So very important to have that kind of balancing system as you're using it. Then all the other safety item they have in there as part of this BMS is a thermal sensor, which you place in the center of the battery pack. And that will shut down the power if the temperature ranges that you set in the settings there are exceeded. So if it senses that that cell is getting near freezing, or if it's approaching that over temperature, it will automatically cut down, shut off the currents, anything ingoing or outgoing to protect the battery pack. Next slide, please. And Overkill, their main customer base seems to be people doing homemade emergency power systems. A lot of it is solar arrays that they're setting up homemade solar power systems. So I think they've dealt with a lot of people who may not be as familiar with dealing with high current situations and everything. So I love it. I love their manual. It kind of tells you what it is. It's hard to read on the slide here, so I'll just go through it. So first, the good news. Lithium iron phosphate batteries are one of the safest types available. They contain no hazardous or noxious substances and have superior thermal and chemical stability compared to other lithium battery chemistries. That said, the battery cells we sell will store a lot of energy. That is the whole point. More than enough to maim and or kill you, your friends and family, and burn down your house, RV, boat, or whatever if you do not know what you're doing. Okay. They then list a number of precautions when you're working with systems, things that you don't want to do, like wear jewelry when you're when you're handling battery terminals, uh, de-energizing the systems, being careful with metal tools anywhere around terminals. They're warning people against these things because as most of us know as hams, a battery that's short circuited will dump hundreds of amps in a heartbeat and cause a lot of thermal injury. Their final warnings were whatever stupid thing you do with our products after you buy them, this is in their manual, is 100% on you. There is no way to make them completely safe. They tell it like it is. We support you learning new things through research and experimentation, but a certain baseline level of technical competence and sound judgment is absolutely required. And then the last thing they say, if you're completely confident in your abilities, turn back now. Fear keeps you alive. So that was a lot of fun reading all that in the manual. Next, please. And this is out of their manual as well. This is the battery pack assembly. Now, one thing you must do with these cells is you have to top balancing. Top balancing means you're loading them at very close to their capacity, but making sure they're all matched. And the best way to do that is what they call a top balance. Essentially, you're going to put all those cells in parallel and use a constant current, constant voltage power supply to bring them all to 3.65 volts. So that's what I did. I put the 4 cells I had in parallel, hooked them up to that constant voltage, constant current power supply, and let it run for a few hours. They were probably in the neighborhood of almost 3 volts, the packs, when I got them shipped to me. So it took a few hours to bring them up to full capacity like this. And then once that's done, you assemble them in series and put on the BMS. You attach the different wires to each of the shunts there between the packs. And I'll show it to you when I open up this case later. You can have a good look at how that all goes together. And as I mentioned on the board there's bleeder resistors between each of the cells. So as we're charging the pack, if we find that one cell is starting to race ahead of the others, and if you didn't have a balancing system on it, it's going to keep on going and get overcharged, get damaged, or God forbid, go all the way up to a thermal runaway. When this senses that, it kicks on the resistor to start bleeding off some of the charge from that battery to allow that cell to allow the other cells to catch up. Okay, next slide, please. And I mentioned that this has a Bluetooth transceiver in there. That's also in here, and it works with my smartphone, and they have an app that does there. And these are some of the screenshots here. I know it's a little hard to read all that print there, but the first few, these all show the same thing. It shows the battery capacity up on top, what percentage is full, what the voltage is of the pack as a whole. The 4 blue bars you see underneath is the individual voltages for each cell. So you can see about where they stand. And the other parameters there are when you're running it, what the maximum voltage was, how low you've run it, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I mentioned that if you go to some of these cheap BMS suppliers, they have either none or very poor customer service. Overkill's the absolute opposite. When I put this all together and fired to this pack, I couldn't get anything to work. It wasn't putting out voltage that I needed, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I did what Overkill recommends is I sent him some screenshots of what's going on with the app there and everything, and a few pictures of the pack I put together. And it came back right together. All the way on the left-hand side, if you look on top of that blue bar, there's a couple of, at either side where it says power, those are switches. The one on the left is allowing power to go into the battery. The one on the right is the one that allows power to go out. I had switched off the output. And he says, oh, they spotted that right away and got back to me in a few hours. And said, apparently you shut off the output on their cell. All right, take 2. And what it shows is on the next one, the center one, I now have the switches working properly, and I have power I have it. I have the switches open. I don't have any devices connected to the battery pack yet. Third one, I put on a battery pack. I put on the light, and I'll show that later on. You notice that on the power output, it shows there's 4.7 amps going out, 62.4 watts. So that's what I was running with the light there. It's showing the output. If I were to connect my power supply on there, you'll see amperage going in. The charger, I should say, the charger that I use for this pack. Next slide, please. And this is just a variety of other settings that you can do on the app. One thing I did was figuring out the true capacity of the what you have on the battery pack. Basically, I had to go to the China Airport Lithium Battery Corporation website. I downloaded the specs on their cell, and they also had the curve for discharge on that. So I was able to go to the curve, and unfortunately, it was a very tiny little graph with very poor resolution, so I had to get a straight edge and kind of do best guess. But I was able to do what the voltage is in each of these cells at 10%, 9%, 80%, so on capacity. So I could follow along on the app and see where I am with capacity for the power pack as a whole. Next. And this is a look at the portable setup. Basically, what I did was, after I put all these cells together, I bought a heavy-duty toolkit with wheels. So you saw me pick that sucker up before. I don't have to pick it up all the time. I could roll it out on wheels, which makes it so much easier. And it's a good heavy-duty case, which will support the weight of the batteries. And also had enough room in there so I could put in the wiring harness, put in the power takeoffs, and then on one side, I put the sockets and etc. for any devices I wanted to connect. And basically, I went to eBay again, or this might have been Amazon, and I actually got parts that people use as aftermarket for setting up panels on their dashboard if they want to put extra devices on. And I found a neat one which had a toggle switch. It also had a voltmeter, digital voltmeter, so I could visually see that if I wasn't looking at my app right then. And it had two USB-A connectors, one USB-A connector and two USB sockets, two cigarette lighter style sockets. Why did I go with those? That's what I have to use for our CPAPs. I have to use a mobile power supply, which was designed with those. And then I put in two chassis mount Anderson power pole connectors, and that's what I use for hooking up my ham gear and a lot of other stuff, essentially. And the wiring harness in there is indeed fused, and you saw me pick it up before. I weighed it on a scale this morning, and my guess was that the whole thing weighed about 60 pounds. Well, guess what? It is exactly 60 pounds. With the battery pack, the case itself, wiring harness, and all that. So sure beats 180 pounds. And like I said, it's on wheels. Next, please. Does it work? Yes, indeed it does. As I mentioned before, Cameron, I've used it while we're camping to run two CPAP machines, and we did that for 2 nights, and we had plenty of capacity left in the batteries. A third night will be no problem, and also charging cell phones while I was doing that. I've used it for emergency light at home, so I'll fire up this 12-volt lamp later on. That's what I use at home. I reflect the spotlight off. I have a white ceiling like this in my living room, so basically I bounce that light, and that gives me enough to get around. I'm probably going to get some more LED lights that I could hook up with this that might enhance my emergency power capabilities at home. Of course, it will be used to power my amateur radio station, both at field day but at home. And I have a smart charger here, which has settings for lithium iron phosphate batteries, and it seems to work without conflicting with my BMS to recharge this pack. Next, please. And that's it. That's a picture of it, but that's the That's the cart there. As you can see, it's on wheels, so I just pick it up on one side. It's got an extendable handle, so I could pick it up and tote it around and push the handle back out of the way. A little hard to see here, but if you look at those bluish looking things underneath there, that's the toggle switch. Yeah, thank you, Laurie. Yeah, about in the center there. That's the toggle switch right there. And over there are the lighter sockets all the way on the left-hand side where the USB sockets are and the voltmeter. And toward the other end of it is where my two Anderson power pole connectors are. Anybody have any questions regarding this? Yes, Bob. Yes. Yeah, it's a 12-volt input into into that panel, but I think it's got the circuitry to drop it to 5 volts for the USB. At least everything I hooked up on USB in there didn't get fried, so so it seems to have worked. Any other questions? Yeah, there was a question from our Zoom. Oh, okay. I'm going to walk over to read. It's not showing up on this computer. Yeah, Fred asked about lithium iron magnesium phosphate batteries, which nope, I have. This is the first time I've really worked with a large power pack of lithium battery, so I'm not familiar with that particular chemistry. So, okay. All right. Well, the rest I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring this power pack around. I'm going to show it in use, show the app. Unfortunately, that's not going to show up too well on Zoom, but eh. Excellent. That'd be great. Okay. And I'm going to wheel this pack around. I'll probably be going to be moving away from the camera unless the camera can be shifted around and show it to everybody else. And thank you all.
Dave, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic. I did a big round of applause for our two presenters tonight because I think they both did a great job and very interesting topics.
Lori, check Zoom. Lori, check the link.
Everything's up, Bill.
Yeah, I said check what I was in there. I put a comment.
Bill, I can't see your comment.
I can't either.
Okay, what I was saying is, how long does Dave think that would lasting if over like a 10-year period?
Well, if I take well, like I said, these batteries can go through several thousand cycles. So I expect to get a lot of years of use out of this. And keep in mind with the cycles, this can go down as low as 20% of capacity and not have damage. And I do have it set up that what they often recommend doing is that you set up the BMS so that when you do recharge it, that you don't go to all the way to full capacity. You might go to like 95%. That actually helps prevent overcharging, but also it can lengthen the life of the batteries. And that's something the manufacturers have recommended, that you don't go to full capacity every time you're charging it. Just go a few percentage points underneath that can make a difference. But I expect to do, they said, if you treat them well, you can get a few thousand cycles out of these, up to 3,000 cycles. So I think I could probably get a good few years out of this if I treat these batteries right. But like I said, their weakness is overcharging, and you also want to avoid overheating them or trying to work them while they're frozen, that kind of thing. Yes. I can do that. couple things I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my toggle switch. Oop. That is. And you can see the voltmeter there. That's where my USB connectors are. They're around that voltmeter. And then on this part here, that's the cigarette lighter sockets. And over here's my Anderson power pole. So this is one of my emergency lights from home. Set it up with the there we go. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to shut that open. I'm actually going to bring up the app for Overkill Solar. It's a Bluetooth app, so right now it's coming up. It has found the where the BMS is, so I'm gonna.
Okay.
Okay, and right now it's waiting for the BMS, and it's giving me the data. Right now the battery's at packs at 100% capacity, 13.31 volts. There's no power going out. Now I'm going to turn on that light and switch. And then you see on the side here, it's showing me that I'm discharging at this time. 4.7 amps or 62.4 watts. Now, as I mentioned before, if I take my smart charger here and were to plug it in, and it would start showing input power as well on the other side. Or if I had shut off everything and I'm recharging the battery, it's going to show me the state of the battery, how quickly amperage is going into it. And like I said, these cells can accommodate a high discharge of current without being damaged. This BMS is rated for 120 amps. I could start a fire. You can start a fire with the output from this, yes, but you won't damage the cells, and the BMS will cut it off at 20%. You can't go below capacity and start damaging cells.
How small capacity BMS is?
I think this one's the smallest. Yeah, I don't think they do tinier than that. Their primary customer, like I said, are people who do solar panels, their own solar power systems. Some of them, this is a 12-volt system. They also do 24 and 48-volt systems as well, the way you gang the batteries together.
I was mostly interested in BMS for cable modem and routers.
All right. Here you can look at the guts of it. These are the 4 cells here. The BMS is on the side here. Yep. Actually, it's fallen off the side. I usually use double stick tape. That's the battery maintenance system down here. I'll just bring it up a bit so you can see it. And these are the power takeoffs that I put in. Heavy duty. There's fuses on the wires here and all. And then when I want to use it for amateur radio, I've got my trusty distributor right here. Everything I have is on Anderson power pole connectors. So that is what I will use for field day to feed my stations, essentially. And I'm liking it. And if you look in the corner here where this little blue light, that's the Bluetooth transceiver right there. And right now, excuse me, right now it's talking to myself.
Dave, what's the temperature range again, high and low?
Freezing to, 140 is where damage really starts. We're talking about 140, 165 Fahrenheit is where you start seeing damage.
You couldn't really put money in
yeah, I wouldn't recommend leaving it in a hot field in the sun. But that may degrade it over time. They are sealed. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure the exact chemistry of the electrolytes they use in there and everything, but my understanding is it if you were to rupture it, it turns into a gel, essentially. So you're not going to have leakage. Yes. Oh, yeah. Part of what the BMS will do is tell you the temperature. I got to look that up. Yeah, temperature sensor says it's 67.7 Fahrenheit. You know, 68.1. And it is taped directly to a cell. They say they don't want you to read a thing, not read it in contact with one of the cells. So it's actually in between here and one of these sleeves.
This is Dan. I could comment about at least AGMs, the pressures, any AGM battery you buy that's in a plastic case, say the automotive size, those have 2 PSI pressure limit pressure relief valves. So if you ever get them hot enough to where they start venting, you're losing moisture out of the battery. And of course, that's what destroys it. I don't know what these are. The commercial batteries that we used to install, they're in steel cases. And the reason they're in steel, those have 10 PSI pressure relief valves on them. So they have to be in a steel case because plastic won't withstand that kind of pressure. These seem to be built a little heavier plastic cases than an AGM, so they may be somewhat higher. But if they ever vent, you're losing the moisture out of the electrolyte. And that's how they get destroyed.
And I'm not sure. Again, I gotta go look up the chemistry. I looked at it up a while back, but as you all know, remember from chemistry class, lithium and water does not work well together. So it's some kind of non-aqueous electrolyte that they have set up. And again, I have to look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it works. It's magic. But I've been very happy with this, and like I said, the portability is great. I'll actually be able to get this to field day myself. Last time I had to call Mark and say, Mark, can you give me a hand lifting this back of my car? It's a 180-pound battery. And the other reason I wanted to get a new battery set was those old lead acid glass batteries that I had, they were wearing out. I had to recharge it several times over field days. Clearly, it wasn't at 180 amp hours capacity anymore. It was degrading rapidly. This, I should get a good few years. Anybody want to actually probably project it before? Anybody wants, I'll pass my phone around.
Dave, thank you very, very much for that presentation. And I'm going to just put the camera back on Bruce. So hold on one second. And I'm going to turn off the light. I turned it on.
Okay, looks like I've got the floor here. It is 9 o'clock. I have one more slide that I would like to go over, which won't take a lot of time because I'm not going in any detail. But what this slide, which will be part of the recording, so you can go in and look at it on the recording, it talks about the programs that we have done during 2023, what the topics were and what the presenters were. And John Green and I had a conversation today about wanting to put together a document about how people can put together programs should they want to be a future presenter. And we want to together issue this thing. John did a really good job putting the words around it. I'm going to create a standard format with some words around that. So if we get somebody that would like to, in the future, come do a program for us, please, it'll be lots of fun to do. You should have all of the tools in your pocket as soon as we get this thing distributed. And if you need help, you can come to either one of us for the final mile to get you ready for the presentation. And just quickly looking at this, this is January through November of 23. As you all know, the December 2023 program was the Christmas party. And July of 2023, we did not have a membership meeting. But look at what we had last year from your buddies in the Ham Club. Boyd starts it off with Birth of a Ham Radio Station. Mark had his fantastic word clock. Wilson, his reconditioned 1941 Millen VFO. Roger had his POTA, portable antenna, and Randy had a presentation on streaming. And then we moved to Chatham County because we wanted to get Mike involved and talk about Oxcom, which we're trying to reincarnate here with Fred and Orange County. So Mike did a presentation on Chatham Oxcom, and then he came back the next month to do WinLink. And then there's Aurora doing 3D printing. And Dan came back in, linking all of the two counties again with what the current status is of the Tri-County Repeater Planning Group, which is still going on with what Dan is doing with John and with the folks from Chatham and also Charlie from Durham. So it's still very much an active Tri-County Repeater Planning Group, which we hope to get an update from shortly when you'll start to hear things about linking the repeaters in the three counties together and what a great job they're doing with that. And then we had Dave. Dave seems to be up in front of this group frequently. So Dave came in to talk to us about Field Day in May. Let's get ready. Let's get the band captains. Let's get moving. Charles, KY4HU, came in and talked about ChatGPT, which has been in the news a lot at that time, which I had never heard of, but certainly it is now. Then we had Field Day again with Dave, final preps with getting ready for the June Field Day, and then John with the potluck dinner, which everybody loves every year. And then Dave is back doing a drone presentation. You see a pattern here? Dave seems to be like every other or three at a time and then gone for one and then back. And then in September, we had Dave doing a Field Day update. And then Lori, for Christmas party, with she gave the presentation, but with the rest of her team working on that, Jean and Patty. And then we had a meteor scatter presentation from John. And then Ben from Aurora's ham pie team came in and gave us a demo on his outstanding rotor that he built in his machine shop. And then Ron, who volunteered at the November meeting to be the assistant treasurer, came in and gave us a presentation of the multifunction audio controller. So I could have gone back in the 2022, but I didn't think I need to. Your club members have done a fantastic job entertaining us, knowledge transformation, or transfer rather, from them to us, and just generally keeping us interested in what's going on within our group. And I think, step forward. It's time for you, whoever you are, to say, hey, I could do a presentation. I might need a little help putting it together, but I could do one because I'm really interested in this, and this has been a fun project of mine. So we've got February taken care of. That's going to be the IEEE truck, will be a presentation. And right now I'm trying to organize an actual tour of the truck. So you'll be able to go see the truck, either doing a maintenance window or an actual training exercise. I'm waiting to hear from them, but they can't bring the truck to the February meeting. And then where John may be doing the March presentation on his SX88 that he's reconditioned. We all loved his KWM1 presentation on the work he did with that 1950s transceiver. So I think you'll also love this fantastic job he's done with the SX88. But then it gets kind of dry for March, April, May, June, July. So think about it. You should see the email from John probably within the next week with the instructions and the guidelines for how you can actually put the presentation together. But think about doing it. Think about participation. Be part of the active club instead of the passive club. We'd really like to hear from you folks because you're talented. Come flaunt it. With that, I will shut up. Anybody else got any questions or comments before we tie a ribbon on it? If not, I'm going to go to bed and put